afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our Migrant Leaders Connect conference for July. It's a real pleasure to have you all join us. Unfortunately, I have to give you apologies from Elham. She's not able to join us today because she had to go to another important meeting, and she's actually in LA at the moment as well. So we're not 100% convinced the technology would have helped us there. So today we've got two mentors who are very kindly going to share their career stories with us. But before we get to that, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how I came to be at Migrant Leaders and a little bit about my career. So if you will indulge me and be patient, I will give you a little bit of an idea about how I got to where I am today. So I'm actually so old that I applied for degrees in handwriting on paper. That's how old I am. Unfortunately, I started an accountancy degree. My first degree that I started was an accountancy degree, and I did that for one term. It happened to be the same year that actually we had a very, very sad and sudden bereavement in my family, and in the September. And At the time, I thought, along with my parents, that it would be okay for me to start my studies in London, move down to London, and start an accountancy and finance degree. As I'm sure you can imagine, and in hindsight, that was probably not a great idea. But I actually dropped out of that degree after a term because I just wasn't coping. I wasn't enjoying it. I wasn't coping. There was too much grief to handle, and it was probably not the best idea. So I took the rest of the year as a gap year, and during that time, I reflected on what I really enjoyed about the course that I'd started and what I didn't enjoy, which was the accounting bit, double entry bookkeeping, not for me. And so I reflected, and all the parts that I enjoyed were the social sciences, the organizational behavior, all of that sort of stuff. So I decided that I would start a degree in social sciences, and that's what I did the following academic year with a specialism in social policy. Now, at the time, I didn't expect it to be a vocational degree. I had planned and wanted to work in public relations. And so anyway, I started my degree. In the year one summer, I got a work experience opportunity in London at a PR company that did travel PR. Got there, had 6 weeks there, and actually didn't fit in at all. Well, not my sort of people. I don't think they were quite sure what to expect of me, what to expect from me. And I finished that work experience. And although it was a good experience, it wasn't something that I thought I was going to do long term. So anyway, I did my degree. I applied for one graduate program with Tesco Supermarket, got to an assessment centre, got to the last two candidates for that role, and then actually didn't get that role because the person who was successful had more experience in writing for magazines than I did. So again, a bit of a disappointment, but I got my degree. I, as one of five girls in the family with a Muslim background, when I rang my mum up, so I'm one of five girls and one brother. So when I rang my mum up to say, I've got my degree, mum, her response was, that's great. She said, when are you going to come home and get married? And I said, you know what, I think I'm going to go and see if I can get a job. And she wasn't too sure about that, but that's what happened. And I came to London, got a job in a call centre, which was the route that a lot of people went on in the late 1980s, early 1990s, when they were graduated and they, had to get a job to pay the rent. That's what I was doing. Anyway, so my first actual job that was related to my degree was at Camden Council. And when I reflect now on my first three jobs, I realised that I applied for all of them in writing. I hand wrote a letter, hand wrote a CV, or probably typed up a CV. Actually, I did have a typewriter, not a computer. And I got those three jobs. So no online applications, none of that, all face-to-face interviews. And I started at Camden Council. I then went to a housing association where I spent 9 really happy years, uh, working in interdisciplinary teams, working in lettings, working in policy, and doing a little bit of support on the HR side as well. From there, I was quite fortunate to be able to take voluntary redundancy, and at that point decided, with a being a social scientist, I wanted to work in a different sector of social policy. So I went to work in race relations, and I was lucky enough to get a job at the Commission for Racial Equality, and did that for a while. Really enjoyed that. Did some really interesting work while I was there. The main one was helping to organise consultation with senior thought leaders and specialists from different sectors on the race relations legislation that eventually became the Race Relations Act 2010, if I remember correctly. So that was really interesting, and that really set me up for some really good skills on top of those that I'd already got at the Housing Association. In 2007, I think that's right, the Commission for Racial Equality was wound down because it merged with the other equality commissions and formed what is now the Equality and Human Rights Commission. And at that point, I decided that I didn't want to carry on with that. I actually wanted to be at home because my son was young and I wanted to be around for him. So changed tack completely, retrained, and started working in the property sector again, but doing surveys, property surveys. That actually came to a halt during or as a result of the 2008 crash, which meant that the property sales dried up, and therefore my work dried up. So I was sitting here drumming my fingers, wondering what I was going to do. And so took a decision to go back into housing. So I did that for a little while in a little job, which really didn't stretch me, but it took me out of the house and gave me something to do, and a bit of social connection with people, because I had been sitting at home watching daytime TV, which you don't really want to do for very long. Anyway, got to that housing association, was there too long, got a promotion that didn't, wasn't quite right for me either. And again, made another decision. I need to change tack. I want to work with young people and help them develop their careers. And so because I live on the Metropolitan line, I decided that I would apply to all of the universities on the Metropolitan line, because I needed to bear in mind my commute to work in the days when we had to commute to work. And so I applied to many, many universities. I had many, many interviews, and I had many, many rejections. And so, learnt to reflect on that, thought about, okay, what do I do? What do I tweak? Where do I, how do I answer things differently? What do I learn from those experiences? What am I going to do? I actually got to the stage where I thought, you know what? I think it's not going to happen. I think I'm not going to make the shift out of housing, because I've just got a lot of experience in housing and no experience in education. And I was on the verge of actually stopping the applications when I saw the advert that Elham had put in to the little local magazine. And I thought, what's to lose? A CV, a cover letter. You haven't got a chance if you don't put your 2 pennies worth in. So I put in an application, met her shortly afterwards, and was given the job. So really luckily, so I was able then to juggle 2 part-time jobs. So I did 3 days in one and 2 days in the other. And when the promotion didn't work out, I decided to leave housing and work in Migrant Leaders full time, which I started doing in October 2019. And for me, it's been not only has it been a really satisfying move in terms of being able to achieve what I wanted to achieve for my own benefit of helping young people develop in their careers, and helping them develop skills so that they can establish themselves in their careers, but it's also been a growth opportunity for me. So as through Migrant Leaders, I've not only learned new skills, and we're very much, you have to, if something needs to be done, somebody's got to do it, so you've got to figure out how to do it. And but also had the opportunity, for example, developing our app that we launched last year, working with developers to produce the app, test it, and actually launch it last year, which was amazing. And now we're moving on to other things, more technology, more events, and just more mentees and more mentors, actually. So we're in a real growth phase at Migrant Leaders, and I actually have in the family, I have the reputation of being the only person that actually enjoys their job, which um, people tell me is a bit unusual, but I absolutely love it. So I get up every day and I enjoy what I do most of the time. I'm not enjoying the heat at the moment, but enjoy what I do, and I learn a lot. I enjoy the company of my teammates, and I enjoy meeting mentors and mentees at events, and when I have Zoom meetings with them if it becomes necessary. So I hope that is a little bit of a helpful presentation in terms of thinking about emotional resilience, decision making, the choices that you make, playing to your strengths and not actually, thinking, well, mum and dad want me to be an accountant, so I'll be an accountant. And really thinking about, what direction you can take your career in so that not only do you do work that is of value, but you actually gain job satisfaction from that as well. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Amina, who is the data strategy consultant at PwC, and we're going to hear from her about her career story. Thank you, Amina.
Thank you, Fauzia. It was really lovely to hear from you. Everybody has a unique journey, but at the end of the day, if you think about the learning one, what we take out of those journey, it's strikingly similar. And there are so many, as although we have different journeys, but there are so many similarities that I can relate with. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my journey with you all. It's been a privilege and honor. As Fauzia mentioned, I'm a data strategy consultant at PwC UK, and I am I was born and brought up in Bangladesh, and I came to this country when I was 17 with my parents. So my dad was posted in this country for 3 years. At that time, I came in, and I joined a local school to do my A levels. Uh, Back in Bangladesh, I was in Bengali school, where I studied in Bangla. Although there was a subject called English, the way you learn any French or any other language in GCSEs. However, I never had the opportunity to study in English, or so it was a kind of a like huge change as a 17-year-old girl coming to this country and settling into the new environment, completely different language, and picking up my education. I did my A levels in maths, further maths, and physics. It was ages ago, and Bengali as well. The reason I chose these subjects, I thought that it will be easier for me. These subjects will require less English or language. Although I always enjoyed maths, but that wasn't my favorite subject, and I hated physics, I must say. But I managed to do that. While I was doing my A levels, one of my maths teacher kind of influenced me or mentored me. He suggested that I should apply for maths for my university degree. And he studied at King's College, so he kind of inspired me to apply to King's, although I didn't know whether I'll get into the college or not. But at the end, I did. From the background I came from, because maths was considered as a good subject, but it wasn't considered that how you're going to apply it in your career. So it's a doctor, engineer, lawyer. That's something we were encouraged in the family to do that. So I took computer science with my maths, thinking that, okay, there is some applicable knowledge in there. After my A level, I took a gap year. I had to take a gap year because my parents were going back after 3 years. To be a home student, I needed to be here for 3 years, and my parents were like open enough for their daughter to stay in the UK to study, but they couldn't afford the international fees. So I took a gap year before I started my college. Although my parents were open and encouraging enough, they didn't want their daughter to stay on their own. So they found a groom for me. So my husband came from Bangladesh and he came to study here. They found him, and I got married at the first year of my undergraduate studies. And then in the final year, as you can see in the picture, the right-hand side under family, that's my son, for my first child. He was born in the final year of my undergraduate degree. I don't know how I finished that. And I think in 10 minutes presentation, the struggle I went through, I won't be able to explain. When you don't have any family, you have to continue with your studies and you have a child born. Like my son was born 10 days before my final exams. I managed to take that exam and passed, and that is a miracle to me. And I don't think it's going to happen now because I was young. I managed to do that. I was courageous enough to do that. Then after I was graduated, I again, like Fauzia, I started applying to many jobs, and I had lots of restriction. I needed a job that would pay the childcare of my son because we didn't have any family to look after my son, and also it has to be close enough to house because I couldn't leave my son to work far. So I kept applying. I don't know how many jobs I applied. It could be hundreds. Then I started to get interviews and got rejected again and again. And while I got rejection, I tried to learn what went wrong, how I can improve. Then I went got an interview for a job at Philips Electronics in their head office, uh, in their customer data role. However, when I went to the interview, they thought I could do better job, even better job. So they put me to another interview in planning and allocation, where I work with the business managers in the forecasting data, allocating data. So I got for a lower kind of job, then I managed to get a better one. And that's my proper first graduate job. So that would be like few months after I was graduated. Then my daughter was born 2 years after my son was born. I was in Philips Electronics. I really enjoyed the job. The team was like similar aged as mine. However, I already had two children and a family to look after. They didn't. So I wanted to have an environment where there will be understanding of what more flexibility and understanding of what I go through. And people said that public sector jobs are more flexible, and I thought that I would uh, go for those. So I started applying a lot of council job, civil service job. Again, I had that restriction with two children. I needed a job that will pay the nursery cost for two children. That's extortionately expensive, and give my like pocket money as well. So then I managed to get into a role in Surrey County Council as a performance officer, and in that council I stayed for 12 years, but with a slow growth. I changed 4 jobs. In the meantime, I was lucky enough to be sponsored to do my master's in public management from University of Birmingham. And I slowly, because I took it slowly as I was raising two children in the meantime, but I didn't stay in one role. Whenever every few years I tried to find slightly better opportunities and moved on. All my roles were in the data and analytics area. So when like 20 years ago, when I started job, we were doing reporting in Crystal Report, Business Object. I don't know how many of are interested in data area now. They have changed. Those are obsolete. I did coding in C++ and Java. We used SPSS and Access. Those are all gone. Now it's Business Object, and now it's Power BI and Tableau with Python and R. So things have changed, and throughout the time, as the new things came in, I had to learn those skills and changed as we go along. So in Surrey County Council, my last role was like, then I moved from more hands-on experience to more management and leadership. So I managed a small team in Children's Safeguarding Board. They were responsible for producing various data and statistics reporting for many partner organizations like police, school, council, education, and so on. And when both my children started secondary school, they started to go to school on their own. I thought I have a little bit of more flexibility so I can move farther away and I can take on more responsible role. Again, I started applying, lots of applications, lots of interviews. Then I ended up getting a job in NHS, which is London Ambulance Service, as their head of data quality. So I did that role for 4 years, and then I thought I needed a change now. So I have had like 16 years of experience in public sector in data and analytics area. So I started applying. This time it didn't take too long. As I started to look for a job, the opportunity in PwC came up, and I thought, okay, it is a world-renowned company, and I would like to see what it is like there. So I joined as a senior manager in their chief data office, and my main responsibility is providing advisory support around data strategy, policy, data quality, framework, and so on. While as you can see, all this time, I tried to talk about my 20 years journey in 5-6 minutes, but there has been a lot of barrier, particularly when you have in here. I don't have any family in the UK. Both my parents and my husband's parents and family are back home or in a different countries. It's raising children, raising family, as well as continuing job is not the easiest one. But during COVID time, also I started to work from home in London Ambulance Service. It has been a really busy time because we manage 111 and 999 data set, and that's the very busy time. Still, I managed to get some free time because I wasn't commuting anymore. I was started to work from home, and during that time, I always loved reading and writing. I started writing, and during COVID, lot of people picked up reading. So I realized in some of the, because I write in my own language, Bangla. There are lots of literally forum, online forum where we can submit your writing, and I realized I got like very unexpected readership of my writings, and sudden at some point one of the like quite a few big publishers from Bangladesh approached me whether I want to publish book or not, and then I started writing novel. So I published, so I started in 2020 writing properly, and since then I published six six novels in Bangla, and one of them was translated in English as well, which was published last year. And I always write about like immigrant journey in the UK as a like the immigrants who are from. Uh, I use my experience because in council I have worked in. Although I worked in data and analytics, I worked in safeguarding, education, public health, social care sector. I got lots of experience and learned about what happens particularly for immigrants in the UK. So I try to use my experience in my writing. And yeah, I continue to write while I still pursuing my career in PwC. It's been 2 years. I'm enjoying my role with the evolvement of data AI. Things are changing completely, and we are having to learn all the new skills and experience as we go on. So thinking about what I have learned, and I would also like to share two pictures in the right. One is in Bangladesh, where there's a like every year big book fair, where one of that's my stall with all the people that worked in the stall with my book in hand. And another, the top one is I'm very proud to say in the PwC Client Lounge, where they displayed my book. And what I have learned through my journey, it's very similar to what Fauzia said. So it's the resilience and persistence. Sometimes we don't get to choose what we need to do. Things like our personal circumstances and everything that shape what we can do. We have to be persistent if you need to get somewhere. And also you need to have basic skills and qualifications that you need to gain to do whatever job, which area, doesn't matter, you want to work in. And also embrace change, whether it's in a personal circumstances or also in work. Change is a constant thing. The more we want to embrace it. For example, when I started my role in data and analytics, there are completely different sort of coding experience we needed. Now with the evolvement of AI, we are having to learn something completely different. So we have to embrace that change and also follow the passion, whatever it's music, writing, spirituality, whatever it is. The passion is the one that will keep you going when things are not so easy. So that's all I can say. Thank you once again, Fauzia and Migrant Leader, for giving me the opportunity to speak here.
Thank you so much, Amina. That's fascinating, and it's interesting how, as women and mothers, some of the coincidences and the decisions that we have to think about in terms of being able to work, have our families and also work. So really interesting to hear all the commonalities that we have. Thank
Sure.
you so much. Um, Atif, can I hand over to you now, please? Look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Fauzia. Fascinating listening to your story, career story, and Amina's. There are so many commonalities that I can actually relate to. Amazing stuff. And thank you so much for inviting me to share my bit of story with the people who really look forward to hearing these stories to shape their own journey. Um, so thank you so much. And hello, everyone. Um, I call my journey from shadow to summit for a reason, and positively that too. I'll give you a glimpse of a shadow from my distant past when I started the career that we now call something of an important mention. Imagine a boy. There is a silence that I remember, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that hums with expectation. A boy that sits in a corridor of his house or a school, tracing the cracks in the wall, counting them like they might hold the architecture of his future. That's the relatable inquiry that we can all think about. He doesn't know it yet, but those cracks are the first signs of a summit that I'm going to talk about a little bit. I was that boy, born in Hyderabad, which is a city in Pakistan, and then raised in Karachi. I wasn't born into conventional privilege, nor into what we know as a societal or a social power. What I was born into was attention. Before I ever found my voice, I learned to listen. Before I could write a plan, I learned to read a room, to understand the audience. Before ambition, there was awareness. And that was my first phase, the observer. And in time, life led me to numbers. At a school, I studied sciences, languages, but throughout that experience of learning in my primary education and then secondary and then higher secondary education, I thought the numbers were quite relatable for me. Not because I was a born mathematician, but because numbers offered something life didn't or couldn't: fairness. Numbers are fair. I think so. So I learned hard using attitude more than aptitude, because we are all told that aptitude is more important than the attitude. So I went against the wave, sort of, that I remember quite distinctly. And working through my undergrad degree, which was in accountancy and economics, and I chose that degree for a reason. I wanted to do a chartered accountancy. And then I joined PwC for my training, which used to be called articleship, which is still called articleship, but the time or the duration of that experience is now reduced. One of the most demanding and distinguished platforms in the professional world, I would say. And What I learned there during those 4.5 years of very tough training and very tough learning um, wasn't how to audit. I mean, people think when you go for articleship, you just audit. Well, you do, but at the same time, it was how to see through the systems. That was my focus point, not just the numbers now, not just the finance now, not just the audit, not just the verification of what is going right or what is going wrong in the companies that we were auditing, but how the systems work, how that particular system of a pharmaceutical company or a charity organization or a law firm or an accountancy firm or a bank works. That was my focus point. And I learned how to follow money trail to the psychology beneath it. There's a famous book now, The Psychology of Money. I was smiling when I learned about that book because the psychology of money was my first very intimate introduction to the real works of money that it does to the business and the society many, many years ago. And I also learned how to sign off not just on accounts, but on integrity. Now, that was the apprentice in me. Previous phase was the observer phase. Um, Learning to walk the spine of structure. That is spine of structure is a term that I vividly remember from one of my mentors back then. Um, and the spine of a structure means that you just don't focus on the job that you're given, but you should also learn about the environment within which you're performing that job, whatever the job is, whatever that responsibility is. You will certainly learn about how to deliver that responsibility, how to discharge that duty, but at the same time, understanding the environment actually pays off quite a lot of dividends later on in your life. So that apprentice in me, having learned the systems that I was telling you about, um, I wanted to learn the whole of it, which is why I decided not to pursue my career in an audit. So I left PwC. Uh, Systems alone don't make you whole. Systems are part of a bigger environment that I'm telling you about. So I moved to work with the company called Toyota, which is quite famous automobile company globally speaking. And I got a chance to work with the Japanese management minds and leadership minds quite closely with them. And something fundamental shifted in my thinking. The Japanese didn't just work, they actually improved. They didn't interrupt, actually, they anticipated. So the forecasting and projections that we do in finance, before that, the anticipation was the core of it that I learned when I was working with Japanese minds back at Toyota. They didn't hurry decisions, they actually honored them. So they spent a lot of time, quality time with the decisions before they made them. And I realized discipline is not just a constraint, it's a form of elegance that you carry with you. And a stillness that you find yourself in when you are going through the initial phases of your career became a strength for me because I was spending quite a lot of time learning how the managers think about the leadership and how leaders think about the management. And I began to move not faster but deeper. So fast was the apprentice phase, and then but perhaps the later phase also. But at the same time, deeper. Like I said, the dividends. When you're going through your career, you're collecting the future dividends by working hard, by working deeper, and deep work has a lot of long-standing dividends that you actually receive later on in your career life. And this was the craftsman in me, refining not just my skills, but my working spirit. And uh, so Toyota is a large scale manufacturing company, has got a very different environment. Still, it is following the same principles that they followed many, many years ago. Um, and then I was given an opportunity to join a global private equity group. So the global expansion came my way. Um, and then from there, TRG to IBEX and to Quantonite, these are all private equity companies which invest in different kinds of technology companies, but at the same time, they have listed companies within them too, which are much more regulated companies, listed companies which are quoted on stock exchanges. So I stepped into ever longer rooms with ever higher stakes. So boardrooms and conference rooms in 20 plus countries, billions of dollars value of activities managed, board meetings, M&A deals, companies personally incorporated in multiple countries. I did the audits, inspections, completed them, all of them clear, managed dozens and dozens of people under my span of control. Um, and uh, let me tell you a secret. The higher I went, the quieter I had to become throughout this phase. Um, Power, I learned, doesn't speak loudly, it listens first. Um, Leadership, then I discovered, isn't the sharpest voice in the room. Is the voice that echoes after the meeting ends. And this was the strategist, not making noise, but shaping narrative that I'm sharing with you right now. Not commanding complexity, but absorbing it and then learning from it. Um, and somewhere along the way, somewhere between the spreadsheets and the situations and dealing with the people from variety of backgrounds and countries, I reached a deeper turning point. Having secured titles starting from, the most junior title at PwC was the junior, literally called junior, and then the semi-senior, then senior, assistant manager, manager, vice president, chief compliance officer, CFO, CHRO, global corporate treasurer, non-executive board member. All those titles came my way. And I stopped chasing titles rather recently, and started seeking meaning. When I say recently, I think Fawzia and Amina both talked about the time of COVID-19. That was the time which basically taught us quite a lot of different lives when we were introspecting. We were getting to know ourselves better. Um, and that's why the meaning meant more to me. And now, what the world expected of me, but what only I could build. So that was the inner voice, basically, not a spiritual one, but something which basically comes to you when you are thinking more about your thinking. So confidence came when I stayed curious long enough to outgrow fear. So the battle between faith and fear is a daily battle, and you have to make sure that the fear is always beaten by the faith. Faith has to be greater than fear all the time. And I realized I wasn't born to perform. I was born to imprint, and that realization is what gave birth to the architect in me. And that architect, uh, which is now speaking to you, uh, now reads, researches, writes, advises, speaks on strategy, leadership, on change, and on how we as humans must think in a world now powered by artificial thought. So, human intelligence working quite closely with artificial intelligence, and this combination of the two intelligences is evolving and growing every passing day. Above all, I lead myself and I lead the other leaders. But that is another summit, perhaps one you will climb next. And I'm talking to the mentees right now. Now, let me speak to you from from the depth of my heart at this point. Some of you may feel unsure. Some of you may be waiting for the perfect opportunity, or the right signal, for example, or someone to say, now you're ready. Let me be blunt, the world won't give you those permissions. uh, be audacious enough to write the script anyway. It's your script. it's your story. The story that I'm telling you right now is not the story that I thought of to begin with, or maybe in the middle of this becoming, which I have described in 5 phases in front of you. The story is ever evolving, but you must take ownership of that story from all possible corners and angles. And when you do, don't worry about being impressive. Focus on being imprintful. You're not here to impress, you're here to imprint. And that's where uh, the questions which have shaped my life, uh, uh, quite a lot of it. I'm going to leave you with one question, and this is the question that I ask myself every now and then. When your moment comes, and there will be many of them, will it recognize you? And the more honestly you can answer that question, the better, because it will help you craft the story worth telling in time. That's that's uh, that's what I think. So I'm going to end here, and thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Amina and Atif. It's fascinating. And Atif, your sort of categorization of different phases, I'm sure, is something that Amina related to as well. It's quite an interesting take on thinking about our careers, those of us that have been around for a few years and been around the block a little bit. So I'm going to hand over to Neha now, if I may, to see what questions we have and to present those questions to Amina and Atif. Thank you, Neha. And obviously, I'm happy to answer questions as well.
Hello, everybody. So we have a question from Mayur for Amina. What kind of activities do you do in your gap year, and was it useful for you? Would you recommend it?
I think it's driven by need because I needed to start a new life without my parents in here. One of the important thing for me to save money, so I worked. I worked in Sainsbury's and did all sorts of jobs, but I did not want to stay away from education either because I'll be studying computer science. So I did a course to learn some coding language, C++, Java, and those sort of things. So I did a part-time course alongside. But I think anything is helpful. If somebody want to take a gap year and do traveling, that is a fantastic thing to do if you can afford. So if you learn a new skill, if you learn something different, travel around, everything. I think anything you do, gap year is not a like it's not that you are not doing anything. Anything you learn from life that will be helpful. But I did work and I did a part-time course and I tried to save money from my study.
Thank you. Thank you. And we have a question from Tomlin Johnson. Would you like to ask your question for Atif?
Hi. Hi, Atif. So yeah, just a question. So like when you work with young people, what qualities like tend to make them stand out in a good way? Or like something that you just notice?
Right. Curiosity is the key. Um, and although we believe, generally speaking, that self-awareness is something that comes with maturity in age. There's a very interesting Harvard study done many years ago, uh, which basically researched all the successful leaders from all walks of life, um, across the globe, across many countries, not the globe. And they wanted to ask one question of themselves, that what is one common quality in all those successful leaders, which helped them create those successes and become the leaders that they were. And it was concluded as a result of that study that one common quality in all of those leaders was self-awareness. So the more self-aware you are, the more inquisitive you are about yourself. For example, do you know your lackings? Do you know your weaknesses? Human mind is designed to overstate risk and understate opportunity. And therefore, young people or people of all generations, maybe now, have to be aware of this default natural setting of human mind and therefore work against it. So you've got to have a bias against this nature. And spotting these innate qualities is so important. Emotional intelligence is the other, which basically helps people lead, which helps people turn those individuals, youngsters, into the leaders of future. So those are the things that I look for. And now with uncertainty all around us, quite a lot of headwinds and tailwinds that we can observe quite clearly, and we can experience them. So it's also so important that having your world's view quite clear in your head and not relying on what you receive from different sources as information. So those people who are switched on, they are quite attractive for the leaders to bring into their teams and train them for the future. So resourcefulness, from mental acuity to the willingness to do the hard work, for example. Multiple qualities, but I think self-awareness and curiosity are the two key qualities that I look for. And those are the two qualities that I keep improving in me too. So that's why I relate to them better.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you so much. And we have another question for Amina. What technical and soft skills have been most important in your career?
In terms of technical skill, because I worked in data and analytics area, I needed to learn all the reporting when I started. So again, coding language, statistical packages, Excel and Access, those are basic. As we move along, I think that softer skills I felt became the more important part, because everybody entering that area, whatever job area you go for, whether it's tax, audit, technology, data analytics, everybody competing for those areas will have those technical skills. But what will differentiate that? I think it's the softer skill you have, how open you are, how accepting you are, how adaptive, how flexible those are. For me, particularly as an immigrant with lots of barriers, I felt the openness and adaptability and flexibility are the very key things that helped me to settle into different roles and move up. I think you'll have to be flexible and also open. And I think Atif made a very, very important point, the curious. So be curious about yourself and others, what you like, and find out what other people are about within your team. That will help you to network, that will help you to expand your knowledge. Positive curiosity is fascinating thing to have. Thanks.
Does anyone else have any questions that they'd like to unmute and ask for our mentors? I have another question for Atif here. So having done your degree in accounting and economics, what inspired you to pursue a career further into governance and strategy?
So chartered accountancy and prior to that accountancy, they are your entitlements to get into the organizations. When I say organizations, I mean companies around you, the banks, the manufacturing companies or third sector organizations and so on. It's so important to realize that although having an expertise or credible credential to show to your employers or potential employers is important, because that gives you an entitlement to be called for an interview. But at the same time, um, it is incredibly important, more now than ever, to understand and fully grasp the reality around you, not just within your department. For example, I work in finance, so can I just build my career by just focusing on finance function in an organization? I can, but up to a point. Beyond that point, I need to develop my core philosophy in leadership, in a strategy, and for that, I need to just not um, re-educate myself, but also learn from the others who've been there where I want to be. So mentors have played a crucial, not important, not critical, but crucial part in my life. I still have mentors. I reach out to them quite regularly. I ask them very sharp, very humble, very important, life-changing sometimes questions, and I rely on their answers. Uh, so, strategy and leadership, when you want to go higher and higher in your career, for example, if you want to be the part of C-suite, all the chiefs that you see, CEO, CFO, chief marketing officer, chief operating officer, you can't really get into that suite without understanding strategy better, or without having your own leadership philosophy. Um, and governance, corporate governance, is so important for the life of any organization. It was an opportunity, but at the same time, I think it was a fate for me. So when I left PwC and joined Toyota, although my title was quite junior because I was just starting my industry career, but at the same time, I got to work with senior people because of the job description that I had back then. The job description was corporate affairs and regulatory affairs, because of which I worked with the board of directors, with the CEO, with the chairman, with the managing directors, convened the board meetings. And that got me started that, okay, C-suite is good, but above the C-suite comes the board. And that board is where the thinking for the future happens. It is where the people bring their wisdom into the organization. And I learned through multiple experiences working with multiple board members. And then I started sitting on the board myself. I was appointed there. I started rather early, 5 years ago, early in the sense that people do not start their board careers up until they are 50 or 50 plus. But I was so excited about the kind of the thinking and the problem solving happens in the boardrooms that I wanted to start early. In August of last year, Harvard published a study, which is quite interesting. They said that this is the first time in the history of workforce that 5 generations are working in parallel. And therefore, the knowledge work has to now give way to wisdom work. And every generation has their own wisdom. And every other generation has to learn from that wisdom. So, the knowledge work translating into the wisdom work is so important. And the wisdom work, traditionally and conventionally speaking, started at the boardroom level. So this is quite clearly the necessity that you have to get into if you wanna rise up in your career. And when I say I know strategy, doesn't mean that I'm an expert in it. When I say that I know leadership, doesn't mean that I'm an expert in it. I'm still studying, I'm still researching, I'm still publishing a paper. Actually, one of the papers, I sit on AI and ML committee of International Finance think tank, and we did the research for months. And as a result of that research, we published a study called AI Maturity Model, which was sponsored by EY. It was published yesterday, formally and officially published yesterday. So it's important to continue to just explore those areas, but without those areas under your learning paradigm, it's very unusual for people to let you in those conference rooms of C-suite and the boardrooms of the organizations.
Thanks very much, Atif. I think that's been fascinating to hear from Amina and Atif about their experiences and both of them sharing their wisdom. And I really just kind of, before we finish today, I'd like to just sort of summarize, I think, my learning from today's conference. And I think using Atif's structure, I think one of the important things I've learned is that to move from the apprentice to the architect, that requires quite a lot of technical skills that you learn along the way. It also requires testing yourself in terms of trying out different jobs, trying out different companies, trying out different departments within those companies. So you learn to work with other people, you learn to build relationships, you learn to be able to flex your ability to build positive working relationships. That's one of the key things that I've learned from the Housing Association, actually, when I was on multi-functional teams, when we were doing big development projects. That was fascinating to me. And it meant I was working with different people of different levels with the organization and different skills, so I had to learn how to work with them, and that's really important. So I think the theme that runs through all of our speeches today, for want of a better word, is continuous learning and developing skills. Curiosity is key. It won't kill you, it will help you. And continuously learning, keeping up to date. And I think key in this multi-generational workforce that we have, so from, maybe the boomers through Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, millennials, and now Gen Alpha, we're all there, and we've got to learn from each other, support each other, share wisdom up and down, because we can learn from young people as well as young people learning from us. But on that, I'd like to end the conference. Say thank you very much again to Amina and to Atif for sharing generously their stories, and thank you to everybody for joining us and giving us your time this afternoon. With that, I'm going to say goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks.
Take care.